News. I'm Nguyen. I'm a finance reporter here in New York, and I am talking to Killer Mike, aka Michael Render. Nice to
Hey, Lou.
nice to have you here, Michael. Thank you.
Hey, Luann. How you doing?
I'm great, thank you. So today we are talking about Black-owned banks. Mike and I have been talking about this for a couple of months now,
Yep.
and he's finally found time in his busy schedule, promoting his album and promoting his new venture, Greenwood, to talk to us. And so I just wanted to open the conversation, Mike, to discuss hashtag Bank Black. What
Yeah.
is this movement, and why did you start supporting it several years ago?
Well, let me first establish. I've banked black my whole life. I didn't have a choice. Betty and Willie, who were my grandparents, marched me and my sisters down to a black bank when we were children, and we all got accounts. And they had done that as young people, and their parents had also done that. So I'm from a tradition, over 100-year tradition of banking black, and I want to tell people that bank black is not exclusionary, and Greenwood is not exclusionary. It is created to circumvent some problems that worker class people, no matter what color, have. Big banks are pulling out of working class and poor communities, to be frank. Many of those communities, disenfranchised, house black and brown people. In their place came predatory lenders, predatory people who cash checks, like check cashing places, liquor stores, things of that nature, where they were being charged 20, 25 cents on a dollar cash check. This gives them a card that is essentially not taking money from them every time they use it. It gives them the ability to bank fully in their to do their banking fully from their phones, which gives them a freedom that the brick and mortar banks, having left, had robbed them of. So the bank black movement is the first step in the American dream, and the first step is to be able to do simple things like buy a home and a car. Make sure you have a savings. Make sure you have something saved for retirement. It helps working class people work their way and matriculate their way up the ladder. It helps working class people do things like buy a first home to make sure that they have something to leave their children and they have something that is accrued, that is worth something, that establishes wealth. Everybody's not going to be a millionaire, zillionaire, or billionaire, but that does not mean that people cannot have dignity and being a part of the working class and middle class in this country. And banking black allows black people, a disenfranchised community that had been denied through terrible acts such as slavery, Jim Crowism, redlining, and now brick and mortar banks being pulled out. They have just been terribly treated. And I think that this does a lot to restore the ability to achieve the American dream, to have some sense of equity and equality, and to not only service the black community, but when the black community is stronger financially, the greater community is stronger financially. Because in
Mhm.
capitalism, competition ends up helping the consumer more than anyone else.
Great. And, we've talked about Black-owned banks extensively, and you're always shouting out different firms. You even did that when we were preparing for this call just now, right? So
Yes, yes.
you talk about Black-owned banks a lot. Now that you're kind of coming into the scene with your own digital bank, how does that affect, what you say about this movement? Now
Well,
that you're a competitor, how's that been received?
there's no shortage of churches, liquor stores, and barbershops in my community. So you can never get enough haircuts, Jesus, or whiskey. And I think that banking can work the same way. I think that we are new, that we are revolutionary. Of course, you want to be the biggest, baddest business on the block, and I think we're going to grow to be there. With that said, I believe that most working class people. So if you're poor, it might be a little harder. You got one bank account, then you're saving under the mattress, like I still do, and I get that. But if you have an extra bank account to save toward Christmas, if you have a bank account to set up for your babies, I encourage you to set it up at any black bank, whether it's Carver, whether it's One United, whether it's Citizens Trust, whether it's any of those banks. I encourage you to do it because we need to be taking care of our own community. Without the Bank of Italy, that was started by Italian immigrants who were coming through from Ellis Island to make sure that they had the ability to lend, to start businesses, we would never have Bank of America, which it grew into. So if we don't support black banks, we're not going to find it easy to find support in the banking space. But I'd like to add that there's a new dog on the block, man, and she's walking around trying to be seen, and that is Greenwood. We have the ability to create a lot of noise, to focus that black dollar, and the ability to facilitate fairness in the banking institution. So we want to add to the legacy of black banks, not necessarily take away. I don't want to see another black bank disappear. What I'd like to see is cooperation, collaboration, and a bigger conglomeration. And I think that time will tell, and we'll see what happens.
And we were talking about the partnership that you are right now negotiating with, a partner bank that can't be named yet. But I want to ask you about these big Main Street banks, if you do end up partnering with a big firm, how do you make sure that they ensure the mission of Greenwood is carried through, that racial justice and equality are
Absolutely.
something that's going to be upheld by that bank as opposed to maybe perpetuated, or inequality being perpetuated?
I like to go back to a story where Wells Fargo, as we know, their CEO just got into a little trouble for saying he couldn't find black talent. I'd like to push back and challenge to say that I believe black talent is out there, and if it's not, what are we going to do to be like a sports franchise and develop the black talent? So where he sees a lack of black talent, I'd like to encourage him to partner with at least three schools in the metropolitan Atlanta area. Start with kindergarten, and mentor those kids through 13 years of school and get those kids into college and graduate the talent you want to see. Much like baseball, invest in the Caribbean to grow talent, much like the NBA, invest in the cities throughout the United States. I think that you should be investing in talent, and I think there's talent out there. Beyond that, though, I think that there is a real will and want to learn what is the right thing to do in this moment. And there's a sincere effort to partner and have true collaborative partnerships where you're listening to the partner who may not have the biggest purse, but who may have the most experience and is direct contact with that community. So I think that right now corporations want to learn because they not only realize that it's wrong morally or wrong philosophically, I think that they understand it's bad for business to have black people out of the financial loop in this country. So I think that whatever partner we choose to go with is going to become a better corporation for having partnered to us, and it's going to give us a wider spread. I think if we're all doing a little bit, no one will have to do a lot. But I think a lot needs to be done to make up for a lot of the things that were done in the past.
And Mike, so in episode 1 of Trigger Warning, you tried to spend all your money at Black-owned businesses, and you
Yes,
really struggled, right? So,
yes.
my question for you is, how do you avoid that now that you're opening a bank that is aimed towards Black and Latinx people? How do you
Yes.
make sure that you aren't, kind of being too narrow in your focus?
Well, we're not because the beautiful thing about this country is it's for everyone. I do business with every type of nationality of person, whether it's barbering or the restaurant business or the real estate business. I'm in a few different businesses and I see all types of people. I encourage people, whether it's in my music or in my daily talks, to make sure that you have a friend, an ally, or someone in your life that's not from your racial ethnic background, that is not of your sexual persuasion, that's not of your own spiritual belief. Because honestly, that's the only thing that makes collaboration and cooperation work so effectively in this country when it does. So I believe that in the same way, I believe there are three ways I define black businesses. Either you're owned by black people, totally ran by black people, or you're owned by people other than black, but you employ black people, which is positive for the community. Or if you're a small business that cannot be hired or being owned by black people, that you do my community fairly. I think that we have the ability to do that in terms of cooperation and collaboration. And I think that we're going to do it.
Okay, and then just a final question, and again, this is a big picture question. How has the banking industry contributed to inequality, racial inequality in the US, and what does
Well,
Greenwood want to do about that?
redlining, we know we know that it was damn near impossible in cities like Chicago for black people to get some of the same loans that they deserve. We know the GI Bill was not honored when black soldiers came home from World War II. We know that where you have comparable people applying for loans, that white people get turned down at an 8% rate, black people are turned down at a 21% rate. I know that there are businesses with nuances that people don't understand. Like when you're talking about getting a small business loan for a barbershop, it can be much more hard at a larger bank because they don't even understand black guys go get their hair cut 4 times a month. They have to go every week. $25 a week is $100 a month. That's about $1,200 a year. They don't get that concept because their customers go to get a haircut every 3 months. You understand? So there's a need for this there. I think that there is a tradition of not helping the black community in all institutions, not just banking institutions. We've been failed by the medical institutions. We've been failed by the political machines. We've been failed by virtually at the education institution. But I think that banking can understand even faster than some of the other institutions that the black dollar is a powerful force in this economy. And if we help the black community get financially literate and properly focus that black dollar to grow business, to further help competition in this country, that the banking systems wins, greater society wins, the black community wins, and overall the customer wins.
Okay, Mike, I got to ask one question for the fans. You're parlaying your business skills into finance right now, but what does that mean for your music career?
I'm gonna keep singing and dancing until the day I die. I love my first job, and my wife, who's a far more brilliant business mind than I, reminds me that ultimately, Michael, I'll handle the numbers. You just keep singing and dancing.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Killer Mike,
Thank you, sir.
Michael Render. Appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you. Love and respect. Have a great day.